Everybody, what's going on? I am Chris Flowers. I am the executive producer of the Biz Coach Show, and I'm here with the one and only Eric T. Whitmore. He is the founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Chris?
I am doing okay. We are here, and we are in the presence of Jessica Alma. She is the founder of Scribe Syndicate. Wanted to thank you once again for coming on the show. Certainly appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here.
And thanks for everybody being patient with me, getting this thing going. Let me read Jessica in. She has started Scribe Syndicate as a small marketing firm back in 2012. She began as a content writing business for marketing copy for small and medium-sized businesses and has expanded her services this year. At Scribe Syndicate, they specialize in creating clear, impactful content that helps small businesses grow, from SEO-optimized copy to full project management for your content needs.
Awesome. Well, Jessica, good. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Let's go ahead and jump in. I want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about your transition from starting as a marketing agency into what you do today. But tell us a little bit about that process and how you kind of moved through the different modes of what you do in the marketing space.
Okay. Well, back in 2012, I wanted to start a professional writing service. So I got into copywriting, helping people with website page copy and maybe some blog articles. I even helped people with things like LinkedIn resumes. But as the business grew and I brought in other contractors, we were doing larger jobs where, we would have ongoing blogs, ebooks, brochures, and other downloadable materials that would help people showcase their expertise online. So we started out, really just helping people figure out what digital marketing is, how they could maximize copy on their websites and really grow their own business through their marketing efforts. And recently, of course, I added more services in for social media and video campaigns as well. While I do the copy, I have other partners that help me get those services done in one place.
Awesome. So what was it, Jessica, specifically that really kind of transitioned from the marketing agency? There's a lot of, if I'm on YouTube and I look on there, I can guarantee you that I will find 20, 30, 50 different channels within 5 minutes that are talking about starting your own marketing agency. What is it that, what was it through your experience that kind of got you to transition to what you do now?
Well, I've always been content focused in my marketing efforts. So my firm is largely just content based. There are other firms that do more technical back-end SEO to promote things, to target the Google bots and make sure that you're more visible that way. But I really focused on just creating high quality content, whether that was through copywriting, social media posts, or creating a video script. And to me, it's not just the content either. I do all of the on-page SEO work as well, so that you've got great high quality content and there's a chance that people will actually get to see it. So you need to make sure that, you have all of the SEO components on the page done properly. And that takes a little bit of knowledge to know how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. And ironically, as you say that, I'm in the middle of doing a rewrite on my website. And as I'm going through that, I say that I've been doing it for about a month and a half. So, but as I do that, that's a skill set that's not top of my list, right? That's something that I definitely recognize. There's a missed opportunity there and I see that on a lot of different sites. Honestly, I probably didn't realize as much until I started analyzing my site and then comparing against other sites that were getting a lot more traction online and, from an SEO perspective and realized, I don't have a lot of backlinks. I don't have a lot of, some of the other things that you should be using that would help get you that extra exposure. And so interestingly enough, obviously, as we connected, I think a couple of weeks ago for the first time, it was like, oh man, there's probably an opportunity for me to retain your services.
Mhm. Absolutely.
That's not fun trying to figure all that stuff out if you don't know it or understand it and you're trying to walk through it.
And I've done that many times for clients too, where we do what we call a website SEO refresh. So not only do we update the information that's on the site and maybe make it a little more engaging, but we add the right keywords and phrases and make sure that the heading styles are correct, and that there's, like you mentioned, that there's links going internally and externally to other places that help the audience get the information that they need. And then of course you always need your call to action on there too. So it should be prominent. You don't want to waste good copy with, not having these performance pieces in there, I would say.
Agreed. Great point. One of the things I learned, and I'll say this is something, and I was, as a neophyte, I got educated on this, but things as simple as, having the call to action above the fold and things like that, which I was not familiar with when I started as a business coach 5.5 years ago. And understanding that, it was so obvious when somebody pointed it out to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. And as I've evolved in my understanding of marketing strategy and things like that, and paying more attention to, good copywriting and things, reading books on and looking at material and content on that, what I find interesting is that a lot of it's pretty straightforward, especially if you look at it from what would my user experience, what would I like that to look like? And when I do that, I recognize, oh yeah, I don't know why that wasn't so obvious. But it's in the beginning when you're first doing it, you're like, oh, I just want to say this and I want to say that. And then you're like, but if I'm the client and I want to get the best user experience, what would I want that to look like? And consequently, it comes out a lot better finished product when I do that.
It definitely does. You just really have to understand what your core message is, make sure that that's visible, and make sure that people understand what you do, what problem you're going to solve, and make it easy for them then to reach out.
Right. Absolutely. So let me ask you this, just out of curiosity, I was literally hit me. What, in your opinion, are some of the best lead magnets to leverage on a website?
Some of the best lead magnets, I would say, if you're doing any kind of special promotion, to have a separate landing page for that.
Mm-hmm.
You can gather your leads. And then, of course, you're also making money off whatever that promoted item is. That also helps you track how many people are responding to that particular promotion. So it's a really good way of seeing what different things, the performance level on different pieces. Ebooks, I think, are really great. And some people would maybe just call them a guide or a white paper too, because they're not really very long. But they do talk about either a particular service or get in a little more depth about how a service works. And to get that valuable information, someone that's visiting the site is, interested enough to download that. And they'll, again, leave their name and contact information in order to get that. So I think those are really great ways to bring someone into your business to learn more about it. And then again, you're providing some educational material that makes you, the expert in the field, which makes them more comfortable to then engage you for services when they're ready.
Right. So I actually, ironically, I had somebody, and this is going back, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years. I had somebody, what I was doing was I was made my ebook available. My ebook, the one that my original published book that I did on goal setting, was like 120, 140 page, nonfiction, book. And I was, offering that as my ebook. Somebody who does digital marketing said to me, you know what, that's pretty aggressive. It's an awful big give for somebody. For me, it was like, it's an ebook. There's no hard cost to it. And if it gives you access to the information that I have, I thought it was great. And he said it was a bad analogy, but it was kind of like, asking somebody to go to bed on the first date. The reality was it was a pretty in-depth give, right? And it required a lot that he said, most people probably aren't even going to read it. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts in that regard. I mean, because when the ebook you reference, you said it's usually a shorter piece.
Maybe 4 to 15 pages for an ebook that gives people some really great insights in a shorter form, because as we know, everyone's attention span is getting smaller and smaller all the time, which is really disappointing. But when you have a print on demand book, there's no reason why you can't be putting that as well on a landing page, and monetizing that, though. Like ebooks are usually smaller, and therefore you don't necessarily charge for them. But if you're going to do a larger book, then there should be a promotional page. Maybe you're promoting it on Amazon too, so you can just include a link to make the purchase. It still may draw plenty of people to look at the topic or purchase the book. But if you're just talking about, how can I generate more leads faster, then you want to give them a taste of what it is they're going to learn, so that they'll then reach out to you to get more information. And that's the way I look at ebooks and white papers and any of those types of things, is an opportunity for someone to read it, go, that's really interesting, I need to know more, and then call you or email you. And then you can actually personally give them those details, or, in this case, pitch your book and say, I've got a really in-depth book on this topic, and here's where you can find it. So there's still ways of doing that.
Right.
And books are great for people like you, coaches, consultants, and things like that, because when they do presentations, they have a giveaway
right
at the in-person meeting that people will most likely keep on a bookshelf somewhere, and it's not something they're going to forget about. So that's what's really great about, the hardcover piece.
To your point, a good additional support product, right? Is that you can. I appreciate that insight, because I think I think there's a lot to be said there in the regard that the ebook that you're suggesting, particularly if I'm trying to generate leads, rather than give them the whole book, give them a quick synopsis of it. So 15 pages, 20 pages, something like that is relatively easy read, that would engage interest and then generate the call to schedule the appointment or whatever the case may be.
Right. I mean, even if you did a short ebook, like I said, with just some really juicy nuggets from your larger book, and then at the bottom of it have a link that says,
right,
if you want more information, buy this book. Maybe not in quite those words, but you know what I'm saying is it gives them the opportunity to choose how much information they actually want.
Yeah. Interesting. I appreciate that. So let me ask you this then, based on that, what's your thoughts on a sales ascension off of that? So I'm sure we've all been on, you buy a book and then they upsell you to some other thing that's, the book is $14.95 or $7, I think is the price point that I often see, get this book. It's $7, and then it's an upsell to $27 for something else that supports the ebook. And then there's maybe a $97 program, and then there's like a $197 piece or something like that, through some type of funnel on the site. What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen success with that? Do you do that? Do you promote that at all? What are your thoughts on that?
I do see success with that. And I know that I've, been caught up in those kinds of things myself, when if it's a topic you're truly interested in, and there's all these other little pieces that, that you can buy as either a package or get you to a next level. If that's something you're truly interested in, then, by the time they do reach out, that's an extremely warm lead, because they really want to know more. And so that can be very helpful, I think. And like you said, you're doing it in bits and pieces too. It's not like, okay, it's going to be $1,000 for this package. You start out with the book, and someone says, well, that sounds interesting. And then, like you said, you've got maybe another $97 product or something. And And that just might draw them in just that much more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. Interesting, because I know when I first got into the coaching space, what was proposed to me was you go after the high ticket client, you get a handful of high ticket clients, you get enough revenue coming in, you can support your business, right? Your coaching business. You can make a living doing it, right? But then, the more I looked at it, and I go back to the comment that I said earlier, the more that I looked at it from a user experience, I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I had purchased started with some entry-level product, really inexpensive. Right? And then I was like, oh, to your point, I absolutely want to learn more about this. I would upgrade to the 27, to the 97, to the 197, or whatever that looked like, right? And I think everybody opts out at whatever level they're most comfortable with. Like, I'll go to a certain point, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to spend any more than that, right? Or the cumulative is $300, right? I'm done. That's as much as they're going to buy, because they keep having the upsell. And at some point you determine, okay, that's enough. But to your point, it's from the person who's selling, right? You're like, wow, that's a really warm lead. If they bought 2 or 3 products and dropped a few $100s on their first engagement on my site or my landing page or whatever the case may be, that's definitely a good qualified candidate, right, for a high ticket program.
Right. And you let them take the baby steps to get there, because there's nothing more intimidating than, hearing all kinds of information about something that sounds like a really exciting program to do or whatever. And then they tell you the price is just going to be 10 grand.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. And you're like, I don't know enough about it to want to drop that kind of money right now. And the first thing I'm going to do is back up. Give me some little pieces to, dip my toes in the water first. See if this is really what I'm thinking it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. I appreciate that. That's great insight, because I know that's for me, even, right? Like I said, that's how I would engage with different coaching programs and things like that. Even, I became a certified coach for Jack Canfield. And even that process, like, I first went to his site, I bought his book, right? And it wasn't like an ascension model per se, but I bought his book, and then later there was a program, and I want to say it was like $297, and I did that program, and I learned a lot about his success principles that he promoted. And then I got an offer to go to a full immersion workshop for a whole week down in Tucson at the Ritz-Carlton. And that was like a $3,000 commitment. And if you did the early in and all that kind of stuff, I think I got it discounted to like $2,200 or something. And I went ahead and made that commitment. And at that event, fell in love with the process and the content and everything that he was doing. This wasn't business coaching related. It was actually when I was focused on being a life coach, but I've since then smartened up. But when I went through that process, when I identified that I was really intrigued by the content and I felt like I was really getting value out of it, then I decided, you know what, I'd like to become a certified coach, because that was the pitch at the event, is if this is something you're interested in sharing with other people. There was 350 people in that room. And I was probably one of, I'm going to say 40 or 50 people that signed up to become a coach.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it helped that everyone was there really trying to decide if this was the direction they wanted to take. And you're all talking amongst each other about, maybe some of your concerns, or, should I do this? What are the reasons why I shouldn't?
Right.
And so that, that's a good model too, where you can have a brainstorming session to really figure out what it is that you're trying to do. And like you said, everyone was there already because they had read the book or they had learned a little bit more about the program, and then they were ready to invest actual money. It's, again, I really do like taking smaller steps in a direction just to be sure that that's what I really want. I don't want to make a knee-jerk decision and then find out later I just needed a little bit more information to determine that wasn't what I wanted to buy.
Agreed. Yeah. Because to your point, that was a $15,000 program for that certification.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I acted today, it was a $2,000 discount. So, I got my $13,000 price point. But had I not gone through those other steps, no way I would have walked into a room and said, oh, yeah, I want to learn about success principles and pay, $15,000.
Exactly.
So, and I think, so the reason I bring all this up is I believe in the coaching space, specifically for what we do. I believe that's a big problem with a lot of small business owners. that there's a lot of programs out there that are $5, $10, $15, $20, $25,000 programs. Maybe they're year-long programs. I'm making the assumption, but a lot of small business owners are like, I might need that, but I'm not sure I'm ready for all that just yet. I don't know how I would implement it. I don't know if I have the time or the bandwidth to do it, right? And so we started creating what I call a group coaching. I definitely need to come up with a better name. I'd love to hear if you have any perspective on that, by the way. But the group coaching program that we created has allowed people to come in for $97 a month. And I get 15 people on a call, and they hear me talk about the different principles and concepts and everything that we teach and coach, whether it's sales or marketing or, whatever aspect of finance, right? Operations. But they get to put their toe in the water. And what I'm finding is that people are now, okay, I've done this for a month or two. I really like the information. I like the way Eric delivers it, or one of the other coaches for that matter. Let me go ahead and sign up for a full year program or something.
Right. And like in my marketing space, I like to be able to offer valuable packages at different levels, just because, business owners are at a different point in their journey, and, they need to fit the budget. I also offer a la carte services because, maybe they just want to start laying a foundation and they're going to do it one piece at a time. And that's also an option. And it's way better than doing nothing. So,
right.
So if I'm saying, well, you need to spend $1,400 a month, and they're like, I just don't have it. Well, there's other things that they can do in the meantime, rather than waiting until the budget can fit that $1,400 a month in. So, I'd rather them be doing something. And I think
Agreed.
that's, the same thing with what you're talking about with the coaching. I think most coaches that I've met, start out with smaller businesses in a group environment until they get to a point where there's specific needs and questions that they have that only a one-on-one can really help them with.
Exactly. Yeah, that's literally what I've seen. As a matter of fact, I've done the data in the last, it's almost 2 years since I started, maybe like 21 months or something like that. In that point, as of today, as I literally just converted one today, it's 19.9% that join my entry level program upgrade to some, either the full ticket, full on high ticket program, or some hybrid where they at least get some one-on-one coaching. Because what's happened is the basic stuff that they were learning was helping them, but now they I really need specific to my business. And, and then we dig in deeper and we do a full needs analysis and really identify. But the best part is they've already done the basic work, right? So I'm not starting from scratch, and now I can really kind of jump in and dive in with them, which ironically seems to help in the engagement. As far as being able to make bigger impact quicker, because a lot of the basic stuff, at least has already been, whether they've taken full action on it, they're familiar with it. And I don't have to educate while I'm coaching,
right?
Which is one of the slower processes. So great insight. Let me ask this with your business. What are some of the things? So I'm going to share this. This is my perspective. Correct me if you think I'm off, but I've done a fair amount of due diligence at this point, as far as something like Facebook or Google pay-per-click ads. You can't even get in the mix without at least $3,000 to $5,000, and realistically, depending on what your business is, if you're in some of the more heavily competitive areas, you might even be closer to 10,000 to even make a dent in those spaces. Would you agree with that? And if you, because I know that's not necessarily your space, but obviously you're probably familiar with it to some degree. More specifically, then, what do you recommend for those people that don't have that kind of budget? Because you referenced that, and I'd be curious for our listeners, what are some of the thoughts you have in that regard?
Well, a lot of digital marketing with search engine optimization is designed to eventually generate leads organically, which in the end is going to be the least expensive. It's always been a bit of a long game, but there's a lot of AI tools that are starting to speed up those processes now, and that's worth looking into. But can you just restate the question again, because I was heading somewhere and then I lost my train of thought.
No problem. Yeah. So I was just saying that generally speaking, the Facebook and the Google ad spend, those are pretty spendy, and so for a lot of my business owners, that's outside their scope, right? And that's outside their ad spend, right? And so they're like, what are some of the tools and resources that you recommend for those individuals that can be?
Right. I do think that, it is a lot less expensive to do the natural organic growth, which demands high quality content. And if you need to go the paid ad route, doing it for a very short period of time in the very beginning of launching, say, a new program or promotion. And then knowing that you don't have to continue that, because eventually the organic material is going to catch up. And that's the whole point, is you don't want to be dropping thousands of dollars in a space, like you said, where, sometimes it's really, really pricey. If it's the keywords and stuff are really expensive in particular industries.
Right.
And so the ads are also very expensive in those industries. If you can avoid it, I definitely would. But like I said, the SEO long game, you do have to have some patience for it to begin to work. And again, with the AI tools in the background, sometimes they can get a lot of traction a lot faster than they ever used to. So it might be worth talking to someone who understands more about that. I partner with someone who works in technical SEO, and they do have a proprietary AI hybrid plugin. And they say it's a hybrid because there is a human being watching it. If you just buy a plugin off the shelf, chances are it's going to do some things that you don't necessarily want it to do. You need to keep eyes on it, and you need to know what to look for. So, if you can start your SEO game off with something like that, you might get traction in 3 months versus 6 or 9. And that means you can reduce any cost on paid advertising in the meantime to offset that. But that's the way I look at it. The idea is to not have to pay for ads.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And the kind of, you triggered another thought for me as it relates to, because you mentioned using paid ads to maybe launch a new program. And certainly if you're brand new, likely you don't have the ad budget, but as you kind of begin to scale, you're like, okay, I want to launch this new product. Let me put some muscle behind it. Let's do some additional ad spend. But to your point, do it for some period of time, 90 days, and then maybe wean off of that and leverage the organic afterwards, right?
Yeah. You'll just need a little more time to do the organic up front. You might want to start 3 months prior to doing any kind of launch, just so that you can get some of that traction building up.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, great point. Okay. And just to clarify, you do this type of work for your clients?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. As we kind of go through, I was thinking about a few other questions I wanted to talk about, but what are some of the what you do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you do some work with people who write books?
Yes, I do.
In that regard, what are some of the things that you offer for your clients in regards to putting their books together?
Mainly, we can do some ghostwriting, editing if they've already got a manuscript together. And then once again, I have some connections with people who are in the publishing arena, because that's not what I do. I don't do the publishing. I can get a manuscript together. We can edit it thoroughly for context, line editing, proofing, get it all ready for the publisher. And I even can help them with some cover art and things for the book itself if they're doing a print on demand. And then put them in touch with the publisher, who also knows how to promote the book, because that's also something that I don't do. And that's an industry all in itself, book promotion. So if you don't know what you're doing, no one's going to get to see your book. And there are some tricks and tips from the professionals that, it's worth reaching out to a professional publisher, whether they're in the digital space or traditional.
Yeah, great point. I interesting you say that, because when I published my first book in 2017, I literally just received a call the other day from I'm quote publisher that they're like, "Hey, we just read your book. We're so excited about it. We'd love to be partnered with you to promote and sell your book." And I'm like, that was 2017. Was that 8 years ago? I'm like, yeah. How much is this going to cost me?
There's a lot of self-publishers out there today, because it is easy to get into if that's something that you're interested in. But then, like any industry, there's some really bad players. They don't know what they're doing, and they're charging top dollar, and you don't get what you want. So, like anything, do your due diligence, research the company, find out, who else they've published for, and really figure out whether they've got the skills and expertise to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah. Great point. As you mentioned that, ironically, in the publisher that I used to publish my first book was a good quality publisher. It was like what they call an in-between publisher. That wasn't self-publishing, but it wasn't solely like your traditional publisher. It's kind of like an in-between. Like, there's a phrase that they use for it. I can't remember what it is, but the point is that when they were their primary authors were fiction, and so I didn't get a lot of push. Right, it was like everything I did to sell my books, it was me selling. It was a lot of extra effort. Put a lot of money into trying to sell those books, and realized it's not writing the book that's super hard. It's selling the book after the fact that's really challenging.
Right. And
it is hard to write the book, but that's even harder to try and sell it after the fact.
Yeah. And it's worth finding the right person. And to your point about, fiction versus nonfiction and what they're used to publishing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You can find a publisher who works in your space. If you're doing nonfiction and, coaching books, then you want someone who's experienced in putting those types of books together and publishing and promoting those. Yep. It just makes sense.
Yeah. And to your point, it makes sense. And in retrospect, I really wish I had been able to read between the lines on that.
Well, that's how we learn.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say when I make a mistake, well, I won't do that again.
Well, I appreciate that. So you mentioned the AI tools. I'm curious, what more can you share with us in regards to any of the AI tools that you either use, don't use, or maybe still holding off on adopting or adapting into what you do? But I'm curious what your insight is. AI is a hot topic everywhere I go as it relates to the coaching space. People are constantly talking about the impact. My primary focus is identifying what's the impact of the small business owner, and in whatever they need to be doing their day in day out running the business. But leveraging the tools that make sense, and then identifying the stuff that's really just kind of hype, and steering away from that so we don't waste money on things that aren't necessary. There's
a lot of tools that do similar things, for one.
Agreed.
And, I always have to remind myself that AI really has been around for a while. I've been using Grammarly for over a decade. It's an AI tool.
Right.
And it's upgraded, since I started using it, to include things like voice and tone and branding and, making sure that there's a consistent message. If you have a bigger company, you can set how you want your copy to be generated, so that no matter who's putting it together, they put those settings on and it comes out with the same, voice and tone and terminology that's being used in the business and things like that. I mean, there's so many things that you can set up. And with other AI tools like Chat GPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, they're all large language models. Mm-hmm. They all have a big database to pull from. And it's a matter of learning how to talk to them and get the outputs that you want. So learn a little bit about prompt engineering, which is just how to query to get the AI tool to give you the answer that you want, and you have to play around with it. Like with Chat GPT, you can create custom GPTs. And that just, you're telling it basically what its personality is, what its thought process is on certain things, because you want it to agree with your ideology on certain topics. And so you play around with those things and tell it, these are your rules. And then you give it a job to do based on those rules. And with, Chat GPT, there's a lot of people that, because it's one of the first ones that people started hearing about, there's a lot of loyal people to just that platform. Gemini, of course, it pops up everywhere if you're on Microsoft at all. So, every once in a while, you probably find yourself using it. Things like Claude, I understand from a lot of people, and myself included, that, if you want to upload a bunch of information to the tool to use in generating the output that you want, it will take a lot more information than some of the other platforms will. So, you want to give it a bunch of spreadsheets and documents and say, I want you to summarize this or outline this or, rewrite it. It might have more capacity for large uploads. Perplexity, I love for the fact that it will cite your sources. So you can always double check the information, because we're most worried about accuracy and getting faulty information, putting it out there and going, oops, because that's going to ding your credibility.
Right.
You don't want to be that person. And so Perplexity is one that definitely you can double check your work much easier. So, I recommend that. I was talking to someone the other day who said that they were looking at AI tool search, rather like as a search engine instead of like the Google browser. And there was a guy who said that, he goes to Perplexity. He says, instead of Googling it, I perplex it.
Yeah.
So, there's different ways now to gather information. And I remember hearing a couple of years ago too, that, the Google browser thing might start to phase out at some point. And now I can see how that might happen, because my first reaction was, no way.
Right.
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 But through tools like that, it's possible that we'll go, down another path with it, and that won't be as important anymore, because I use like Google browser to double check the facts of the AI tools. But if Perplexity is doing that already, then that's just a step I could maybe remove.
One less step.
And you have to be really careful about the material. But you can also have contained databases, like, in a larger enterprise. If they are using a tool to gather information and write an article, and they're using the information from their own databases, well, then they know that information is going to be accurate. It didn't go out into the World Wide Web. It used their database.
Right.
So you're pretty safe, right? So that's the kind of thing that I think individual users will eventually figure out too. Speaking of authors, you want to generate some material to write a blog article or a social post or do a video. You've already written a book or more, you can upload that information into the AI tool and say, create some social posts on X topic based on the ideology in this book. Well, these are your own words. There's no plagiarism involved there.
Right.
You'll be fine. So it's a matter of creative thinking.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And it's a great perspective too, because I think a lot of people are caught up in the, because I saw a use case where they were using ChatGPT and then saying, edit this by 30% or 40% so that it's not, plagiarism. And I'm like, I don't think that that's actually how that works. As a matter of fact, I know it's not exactly how it works. But, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I get the logic behind it, but that's not exactly how that works. And I don't remember, I think it was 30% is that somebody said if it's 30% different. Somewhere along the way, somebody somewhere said that. And I heard that years ago. But regardless, the point is that the at the end of the day, if you're using it effectively as the tool that it is, it can be super helpful. I use it to do a lot of different things. Ironically, you mentioned the using Perplexity as a instead of Google. It was about 3 years ago. I'm going to say it was right around 3 years ago. It was before ChatGPT was launched, and I read a investment newsletter that which I read for copyright information, because their copyright in those letters is awesome. but I was reading it, and it was an intriguing article. It said Google is going to be dead, and that, like, Google as we know it today won't exist the same way in 5-10 years from now. And I'm like, I don't know about all that. As I read the article, it said, no, there's this new technology that's coming. Ironically, I want to say it was like 6 months later is when ChatGPT launched. And to your point, after having used it for as long as I've used it now, because I've been using it since that January after it launched. I think it launched in November, and January is the first time I started playing with it. And I've tried a couple of the other ones from time to time. But what's interesting, though, is I literally use it the way you would use Google now. And then I just, to your point, I do the same thing. I fact check. Generally when I'm doing a fact check, it's stuff that I kind of know what the answer should be. And then I just go to a couple of different sources to verify it. And for me, it's like the Small Business Association or something like that, where I can quickly identify and qualify the data. But, it's really interesting, all the different use cases. I think what's even more interesting for me now is the number of offshoots of software programs that are being created where it's using ChatGPT as basically they're creating the prompt engine for you as a front end software application and putting it on top of GPT or Perplexity or something like that,
and using their own proprietary device. Yeah.
And then selling it for $50-$60 a month or something like that. And because it does exactly what I want it to do, and I don't have to worry about the prompting portion of it. I think it's pretty interesting how that's evolved, because there are literally hundreds, probably even thousands of those out there now.
Yeah, I do think you have to keep an eye on them, though. That's all.
Oh, I don't disagree with that at all. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, all it takes is one wrong turn, and your whole marketing program or whatever goes off the rails. So yeah, it's not quite to the point where it can just run on its own without someone with some expertise keeping an eyeball on it.
Agreed.
But the other thing that I like to use these AI tools for too is not just in copy generation, but in processes within your business. If there's something you're stuck on, you can query the AI tool about these processes and what the best solutions are out there for your industry, for your size business, for a particular circumstance, and it will gather that information for you and give you information so quickly that you hadn't maybe even considered.
Right.
As an example, I was trying to build up my package pricing, and I had done all the research and put all my material together, and I had all these numbers all over the place. And then I just got stuck because it was overwhelming to me. So I took all that information and I put it in 5 different AI tool platforms. And I generated, all kinds of different results. And it turned out that not one of them came out with a result that I really liked, but I combined them all into something I could use. And not only that, but then I played around with an AI tool called Gamma, which does presentations. And also will write a basic web page for you, which just gives you another idea of, like, what it did for me there was show charts and graphs that were related to my package pricing. And I thought that was a neat visual for me to instantly see where the value was that I was headed for and in the tiers. So it gave me this visual to look at, and I was like, oh, well, this is great, because that's not something I generally do. I'll do the copy for a presentation, but I don't put the slides together. This thing will put, on the unpaid version, 10 slides you get.
Wow.
And it generates it within seconds. You just give it the information that you want in the slides, and it spits out a bunch of slides. You pick a theme, initially, and you can upload a theme if you don't see one that you like. But fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
That's interesting. Yeah, especially since Chris and I were working on a sales presentation. PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
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 Well, and it's funny because I put together literally, I'm going to at least hundreds, if not potentially 1,000 different PowerPoint presentations in my career, my professional career. And, but that it's not the content that I struggle with. It's the aesthetics of it. Making it look pleasant, and I have a tendency to over put too much copy into it, and so it's like I write too much, and so I'm like, okay, strip it down, make it lean, and I know all the things, but man, when I build one for myself, I'm just like, oh, it's too much. I'll have my daughter look at it, and she's like, Dad, you put too much in. You cut that out. Put more pictures in there. Find some way to balance it out. So I would love a tool that would do that.
You've written 4 books, so I mean, it's kind of habit for you, I guess, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, I definitely recommend trying out a tool like that. I'm sure there's plenty of others, but that's the one that I checked out.
Yeah, it was Gamma, you said?
Gamma, Gamma. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely gonna have to try that for Chris.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, again, back to the information gathering, reporting, outlines, summaries, topic generation, brainstorming.
Yeah, that's a great one, brainstorming.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have access to a group of people that you can just brainstorm with,
agreed.
And you can brainstorm with AI, and it's amazing, some of the gaps it'll fill in your thought process, because it's like, there's so many things to think about. That it's inevitable that you'll miss something important, like, oh, I didn't think about including that.
Yeah.
And that's where it really shines, I think.
I would agree with that. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say that I've helped, there's had a company that was looking to move from one location to the next. And I've opened and closed so many retail stores I don't care to remember. These are the nightmares that I've been through with that. And I started thinking about, okay, what are the different processes we do? And, it's been years since I accumulated all that information. So I'm going through the mental files, right? Trying to remember everything that was in there. And I'm like, I wonder if I can run this through ChatGPT. So I did. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, I went through it and I'm like, I can't think of anything else. I think I added 2 things out of that list because they were looking to move from one location. So it's like, change this, change that, don't forget this. And I was like, man, that was really good. So all I did was edit it up, find the different pieces that there was a couple of things that it did miss. And I added those in and I'm like, okay, here's what I would recommend. And so what was ironic about it is that was the first time I'd ever used it in a use case like that. Mm-hmm. And I was blown away by how accurate it was.
Yeah.
I tried to your point, if I from scratch, if I tried to remember everything, it would have definitely taken me more than one session. Mm-hmm. I would have to put it down, do it for a period of time, put it down, come back to it, think through, go through a scenario or two, maybe add some more, come back maybe even a third time. And even then, I probably still would have missed a few things.
Right. So anything that has a step-by-step process, you can ask an AI tool, and it will outline it for you. And I love that too. Whether you're, baking a cake or doing an event, how do I get from, scheduling to the actual full-blown event? Mm-hmm. It will outline all the steps for you, and then you can just follow it. And what I like about that is, like, have you ever set up a project management tool? The whole point is step-by-step processes.
Right.
So, like, where do you start? Well, we start with the discovery call, and then we put a proposal together, and then we do, and then we do the actual contract and take a payment, and then we start working on the actual work, and we assign it to somebody, and blah blah blah. So, if you need to break something down into steps like that, again, for small businesses, let the tool do it for you. And then, whatever it is missing, like you said, you read through it and you go, well, I would add this here. Yep. Well, at least you had a starting point. and it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. All right. Well, Jessica, what other things would you like to share? I mean, we talked a lot about the different solutions. You certainly have a ton of experience in a lot of different areas in this space as far as organic content and everything you need to do. What are some of the things that you find that your clients really appreciate about your style or about your approach, and that you feel like you really do better than most out there?
I think it's all in the details. You really have to get to know the client and the way they like to run their business and what it is that they feel is the most important about their business and their services. And then everything has to be pointed in that direction. So, we need to know their goals, and we need to know how they want to share their messages, where they want to share their messages, how often they're going to do it. And I think they like the fact that once you get things all organized, once you've done the work, everything else is so much more simplified after that. And since we're all facing this like technology overwhelm all the time, isn't it just nice to know that at least some of it is automated and working in the background, and you've got the processes in place. So when the next wave of technology comes, it's not a pile on, right?
Right.
So I think that there's just so much to think about in the way of digital marketing content. And, if they understand how to put a calendar together, and I provide templates, customer persona template, just so they know, who are we really targeting? We have to think about that. You might have some vague idea, but have you ever sat down and just looked at, like, what are my best clients and why did it work so well? And turn them into one of your client personas, because you probably have several client personas depending on what you do. And you really need to know who you're talking to. So we think really hard about that. And then we think about the business owner's own values and the mission and the goals that they have, and put the messaging together that reflects that and then targets that particular audience. So there's a lot that goes into it initially. And I think that looking at those details really, really matter. And you're going to come out with something really good if you take the time to delve a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
I think one other thing that you do well, that I think something that stood out to me, was that we can have a lot of content already built up, and you organize on how to do it and how to repurpose it and when to put it back out and things like this. I appreciated you expounding on that when we talked. So, like I said, you can have all these different videos and all this different stuff, but it's like, okay, well, we can repurpose this, we can revisit this.
We don't have time and money to waste. So if you've got some really good articles, they can be repurposed into ebooks and white papers and presentations and recorded webinars, and whatever it is you can think of, it can be done with it. And especially when you're talking small business, you need to get the most out of that material that you can. And there's no reason why you can't. If it's a good solid piece, it's already, again, got the SEO components in there. Let's repurpose it and get it out on a lot of different media types and a lot of different places. So, because, your audience could be in a variety of places, and they may prefer reading something or listening to it or watching it. But if you've got a little bit of everything, then you can pretty much maximize your reach.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. I've shared that with many clients in that regard. Is like, you can't just do, but you certainly can't just do text anymore, because everybody wants video. But you shouldn't do just video either. Everybody's got, and I believe we haven't quite got there yet, but I believe that at some point there's going to be a video fatigue. I do believe that people are starting to feel that. Ironically, I probably have my best experience with my social on LinkedIn. And mostly because LinkedIn is one of the few platforms that you can still do a lot of typewritten right? And get good results from it, good viewers and everything like that. It doesn't have to be in video. They're pushing video really hard, but it doesn't have to be video. And I still get good results with my typewritten content. And I at least been told anyway that I'm a relatively good writer. So to that point, it actually plays to my strength. But in retrospect, to your point you just made, if I made a video up front, I could take the transcription, make create from that the blog post that I want to make or the newsletter I want to create, and then strip it out and do audio and have just an audio only podcast even. And put that on, whatever medium.
And take a couple sentences out and post it on social media with a link back to the video and anything else that's related to it. Yeah.
So, but it's interesting because I think that there's a lot that goes into that. And to your point, as small business owner, you need to be as efficient as possible. Otherwise, you're going to spend a ton of time on things that and you don't even know if it's going to get value for you, right? I mean, putting out content consistently is one thing. Which content? What's going to resonate with your clients? What message resonates mostly with your clients? That's a whole nother piece that you have to figure out, and you have to do a series of tests with that even.
Yeah, that all goes down to metrics, and you should be tracking the performance of each piece and message. And when you come across something that's gold, repeat that a little more often. But then those things change too. Trends happen. So even something that works really well for you for a while might not continue to do so. So you're always playing around with it. You really are. If you're
but why recreate the wheel if you don't have to? If you can repurpose a lot of the stuff,
Right. You've already got the basics down, and all you're doing is tweaking the message.
Yeah, agreed. Awesome. Well, Jessica, I really appreciate the time today. What else would you like to share with our followers that you think would be valuable for them to know about Scribe Syndicate and yourself?
Well, I am just here to serve the small to medium-sized business owner in their efforts to grow. I am, always happy to consult with them just to figure out where they want to go with it. Because sometimes that's the bigger question. Like, I know I need to do this, but where should I start? How do I start? What do I need? I enjoy talking to people about those things, whether or not they engage with me for services or not. I think that education is really important when it comes to the digital space. And overwhelm is a thing, but you have to get past it. So the best way to do that, I think, is to just learn more and talk to a professional about it, and then figure out how you can get started going in the right direction. Just don't put it off. Because when you put things off, that years go by and you're like, I don't know why this business hasn't grown. Well, I can tell you it's because you opted not to make any decisions.
That's a great point. As you say that, I want to piggyback on that briefly, but that's a big thing. When I first started my coaching business, my second client was a digital marketing agency. And it was specifically, matter of fact, I even did it as a trade of service, right? Like at that time, the individual I was working with, a young man, he was like, I could really use a coach, but I don't know that I can really afford one right now. And I'm like, I'll tell you what, I need to learn more about digital marketing. So I'll give you coaching, and what you need to do is I'm going to sit and coach with you for an hour. And then when we're done, I'm going to turn around, we're going to reverse seats, and you're going to answer all my questions about digital marketing. And it was the best investment I could have made. I think we worked together for about 2 years because I learned so much. I sat right there in the agency. I watched things evolve and develop, and challenges and frustrations and all the things that they were dealing with. And they did video creation and pay-per-click and a lot of different areas. And some they did really well and some not so much. But what was really valuable for me was to see all that firsthand, and then help him through his decision-making processes and everything, but very analytical. So, the data, he was really, really big on the data and making sure that so I learned how important the data metrics were. And I'm a big metrics person anyway. So I really gravitated to that. But to your point, understanding how to, really extrapolate from that data, what does that mean, right? What does this say about your ad, right? Split testing and things like that, and identifying what is or isn't working based on even as simple as the hook, right, in the title. Just this one did 20% better because it used this word instead of that word. I mean, things like that would be, for the average person, would be completely beyond them, right? And even then, I have more of a superfluous understanding of it. I don't really have a deep understanding of it, but I know enough to know that I see good quality stuff and I see stuff that's not so good. I'm like, oh yeah, we need to point you in the right direction. Let me put you in front of somebody like Jessica who can help you with this.
Right.
But,
well, there's nothing better than having the information at hand so you can make an informed decision.
Yep.
There's a lot less guesswork. You feel a lot better about making that decision because you've got statistics behind it.
Right.
Right. So we are changing the way we do business where, we don't have to rely on gut instinct or just because this one thing worked before.
That's right.
Times have changed. So, but when you have the numbers, it's much easier to pull that trigger and say, I'm going to go in this direction versus that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, amazing. I really appreciate the time today, Jessica. This has been a great call. I'm looking forward to catching up with you at some other point and talk a little bit more about my website now.
Sure thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. And look, we'll take it out from here.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.